And welcome back to the show. ArtStart is an organization that uses the creative process to nurture the voices, hearts, and minds of historically marginalized youth. Now they offer a space for them to imagine, believe, and then represent all of their creative vision for their lives and communities through consistent workshops. Joining me now is the Deputy Director of ArtStart, Mariama Noguera-Devers, and we thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
And I love what you do because in terms of really reaching young people in the area of a space called art, you're using art to reach lives.
Yes, we were started 30 years ago, and it was always about the arts, always starting from the creative process. Regardless of what the youth we work with are going through, their various circumstances, whether it's experiencing homelessness, justice involvement, or just, low income and these other scenarios. Art is the starting process of a greater, transformation and building.
Yeah. So, you mentioned some things like when you deal with the youth of today, they're dealing with the complexity of issues and they're all, tied to some social justice topics. But talk to us about what you find the youth of today that you're dealing with in your organization are really struggling and dealing with.
Yeah. So I think, especially with COVID, it has exacerbated this issue, and that's mental health challenges. With COVID, with the quarantine, and youth having a lot of isolation from their peers, from their family, or what have you, there has been a lot of mental health concerns and issues that have come up. And so we feel as though now is even more of the right time to get involved in the arts, because we see the power of the arts. All of us who are at ArtStart are artists as well. So we've been transformed by it. And so in turn, we also work with the youth to be transformed. We see the power of arts to provide therapy, to give youth a voice, to share how they feel, or to have a platform to be heard. Because oftentimes youth are not given the mic because they're thought of, they're youth, what do they know, what have they experienced? And so I would definitely say that because many of our youth are experiencing different things, across the board, we have been seeing mental health challenges coming up with some of our youth.
Yeah. And when you look at what's going on with our youth today, mental health is an issue, depression, which is a part of mental health, and just really being able to reacclimate to society. I heard you say something a little while ago, and I want you to just elaborate on that a little bit more. You said that art has actually become therapy for some.
Yes. It's funny, when I first started at ArtStart, when I was teaching, I remember we were teaching at a detention center, and the youth would often say, like, this is such a distraction. This is such a great way to, they wouldn't put it in those words, but the idea is that they're doing this project, or they're dancing, or they're making music, and suddenly the circumstances that surround them they almost disappear. You sort of forget that you're in a detention center, or you're in, a residence for families experiencing homelessness. And so art has the power to kind of, take you away from where you are currently, and sort of reimagine, because it has that power to take you on a journey. Then you're able to say, okay, this scenario that I'm in doesn't have to dictate my future. I can use my voice, I can express myself to go beyond. And so I think there's the power of the arts to take you away from your circumstances in a way, but also just the ability to be able to share things that you might not be able to share in your traditional way, whether you're using lyrics from a song or poetry to share, or just making a piece that says what you're thinking without having to say those words.
Yeah. So for yourself, talk to us about the programs at ArtStart, because they're very beneficial to young people. And so for somebody who may be watching right now and says, listen, this sounds very interesting, make them more aware.
Yes. So we have 3 programs at ArtStart. There's the Creative Collectives program. These are our after-school programs on site with youth and families experiencing homelessness and justice-involved youth. So we go on site, we meet youth where they're at, and we provide, visual arts, dance, music, gardening, even cooking workshops. Then we have our Creative Connections program. This is a program that provides creative and professional development for youth between the ages of 14 and 20 who are interested in the arts but need, the resources to be able to push it a step further. And so we connect them with mentors, industry partners. We're blessed to have a lot of industry partners that are currently working in relevant fields and are able to connect the youth to internships, jobs, but also just job readiness, skills and that sort of thing. And then finally, our public exchanges program. And this is all of our public facing projects that engage our youth and allow them to share their voice through different platforms, whether it's portraiture, music videos, murals, exhibitions. So those are our 3 programs. And the Creative Connections program, we have open enrollment. So for any teens and young adults between the ages of 14 and 20 that are interested in getting more involved, please check us out. We have open enrollment.
And I know you take beginners, and there's some people who may not have had an interest in art, but I know through your program have developed that interest. Talk to us, share with us some of your success stories of people who may not have thought of art as a way of life, who've now walked away with a deeper concentration in it.
Yes. So we've had some of our youth that have gone through our Creative Connections program or Creative Collectives that have now joined our staff, whether as teaching artists, photographers, as well as folks that have gone on to do their own craft, starting, comic book companies or their own photo studios. And we understand that not every youth that gets involved with us is necessarily going to end up in an artistic career. But we understand that by being involved in our programs, they're able to, find their voice, like I said earlier, reimagine and really plan, changing narrative around what their future would be. And so we've also had youth who've, gone into careers in construction or in architecture or things that might be a little less connected to the arts. Well, architecture is, but you know what I mean. Things that, might not be traditionally an artist's position, like, a singer or dancer, or what have you. And they've been able to take that on based on just their experience in the program, of just being able to find themselves.
And so for you, as you look now to the future, talk to us about the work that you have going on and how people can be a part of what's coming up around the corner.
Yes. So I mentioned our programs here in New York. We're also in Milwaukee, and we have a growing program there. We started our programming in 2018 there. And then we also have pilot programming in Chicago to do our project called the Portrait Project. The idea is that youth are paired with photographers, and through a series of workshops, interviews, they're able to dream up images of how they want to be seen and represented in the world. So whether it's a very literal representation, I want to be seen as a doctor or a lawyer, or, something more abstract, I want to be seen as a better me or bigger than life or what have you. And so this project was actually our pilot project in Milwaukee that, started our programming there. And now our community partners in Chicago have requested our programming. So, we're building, but it's so important that in building, we're not just like expanding for expanding reasons, that it's all about, community partnerships and working with organizations that are already doing the work, that are already connected to the youth. And we're just, coming in to sort of enhance and to add, just a little more, what have you. So, that's some of the things that's coming up. and our staff continues to grow. And, you know, we're excited for 2022 and what more we can continue to do.
Yeah. I think about recently we had the family of George Floyd on talking about the murals that have been done and the statue that's been erected in regards to his life. I think about Mike Brown, and I think about, the fact that people were engaging in art to support the life of Mike Brown. When you see what's going on in our community in terms of a lot of the social justice, or I should say the social injustice, are you finding that youth are using that art space to really speak to that issue in a way that maybe they can't be out there in the street protesting, but they use art as a form?
Yes, I would say definitely. I think you've explained so eloquently the power of the arts to be able to get the message out there, whether it be to build awareness or build community or just disrupt, as you've shared. And so I definitely think that we're seeing that with the youth. Many of the youth are invigorated and engaged, and we're finding that so many of them are aware, and it has a lot to do with, social media and the internet. But it isn't unusual for us to have a discussion, about racial injustice, or even, we were having this discussion this week with some youth around, being like, what does it mean to be an artist, a hired artist, and creating work for a brand that maybe you don't support or that doesn't have the same politics as you? How do you negotiate, a check versus your integrity and what you believe in? And so I would say, yes, those discussions are definitely, coming up in our spaces as well.
And so I want to also talk a little bit about mentoring, because that's a huge component of what you do, and the mentoring program and how that's really been impactful in a person's life. And when you're talking about navigating through, mentoring is a huge way that people can have a leg up, or I should say a hand up, depending on who's talking. So talk to us about mentoring and the Mentoring and Art Start.
Yeah. So mentoring looks different with different programs. For instance, within our programs on site, we will have a teaching artist, but the workshop, we call them workshops and not classes, because it isn't like your traditional classroom where there's a teacher who has all the knowledge and she's coming to, or they're coming to impart the knowledge on the students. The idea is that this is a collaborative experience. It's a workshop because we're going in with the idea that the teachers are learners just as much as the youth are learners. And so there is a sense of mentorship that happens with the teaching artist who's leading the workshops. And then in some cases, we have volunteer mentors in the workshop working one-on-one with the youth. For creative connections, it looks more like one-on-one mentors. We're fortunate that we have lots of applications coming in for all sorts of different mentors. Yes, so because the program is so individualized, we're choosing mentors that we're choosing mentors that can impact and can support youth depending on their interests. So, for instance, just because we have a youth that's a singer, we're not necessarily going to pair them with another singer. We may pair them with a vocal coach, yes, or we may pair them with someone who's in social media and branding to help that singer, increase their social media presence or create a brand for themselves. Or we may pair them with a graphic designer to help them create their album art. So mentorship looks different in different ways, but I would say it's so important, even in the art world, because yes, the art world can be very inviting and anyone can be, an artist, and there's a way in which it can be accessible, but it can also be inaccessible in terms of who gets the opportunities, whose art gets purchased, all of these things. It can be, it can make certain groups, especially people of color, youth of color, not be able to enter in those spaces. And so mentorship is also an opportunity to invite youth into those spaces and say, you know what, yes, you belong in these spaces, regardless of your history, regardless of the color of your skin. You know, you have the skill and you have what it takes to get this. And so, yeah, I know I touched on a few different things, but you know.
No, and I think you're doing justice, because I think that when we talk about mentorship, so many times what gives people the leg up and the ability to be able to take it to the next level is the fact they actually had a mentor. And so for you in art, using art to really be a voice, and share with me. I talk to people about this question all the time. What's it like for you to have an art space, given the fact that when we look at our educational system, many of the things that get cut on the first line of the budget is arts, music, and sports?
Yeah, it's so funny. Sometimes we'd have youth join our workshop, like say a teen, and they'd say, you know, like in our programs at the residences, for instance, they'd say, I haven't done art since first grade, you know, like, what am I gonna do with art? And I think you're right that art is often, or the arts are often seen as secondary. You know, they're not as essential. But you know, we've seen the power of it, and you know, we also see the way in which the arts can support your academic um, uh, progress and so on. And you know, I might share that this year actually we were able to partner with these UOE and have youth that that are justice involved, that are incarcerated, receive English language credits, ELA credits, for participating in our visual arts workshops. You know, and that was huge, because for justice involved youth, because they are transient, because they're, you know, moving between spaces, have court dates, all these things, they're oftentimes losing a lot of credits, or unable to you know, be at the same level as their peers. And so to be able to be in an art workshop where you're, you know, enjoying yourself, you know, making projects, and be able to receive credit while participating is so, you know, that was such a huge development for us. Because yeah, like you said, oftentimes the arts isn't seen as having that level of value.
Yeah. So before we go, I just got to get a quick question in for you. For people who want to get connected to you real quickly, how do they go about doing that?
Yes. So our website is www.art-start.org. You can also follow us on social media at artstart.org. And our number is 212-460-0019. But we're always updating our website and our social media with what's going on. For any youth that are interested, please, you can DM us on social media if you're interested. We'll definitely get back to you and get you involved.
Mariama, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Art Start. Listen, and we've got the show started. We want to continue. We got more shows, so don't go anywhere here on the Social Justice Forums. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back in a few.